And Craig Smoak.
Mike Craven, it's TexasFootball.com online. Dave Campbell's Texas Football. He covers a lot, including college football and the tour around the state to talk to different coaches. And Mike Craven joins us now with Paul Craig, David Smoak on 365 Sports. Mike, was there any Power 5 head coach who didn't like the idea of a separate national championship playoff?
I don't know if they necessarily like it as much as they see it coming, and, it's best to get ahead of it. I think when you talk to these coaches, they believe the issue in college football is that for so long, everybody buried their head in the sand, and then all of a sudden, these are the cards that they were dealt. They're trying to be more proactive, I think, and try to think of different scenarios for if a split does happen. So I don't know if anybody's jumping for joy. But I think that all the coaches are just trying to think through ways to keep college football viable, from the very top to the very bottom.
Mike, I mean, it's going to be a weird thing if they ever did it. It's going to be hard, to get it off the ground, I'm sure. But I mean, when they're trying to talk about creating more excitement and more revenue to try and close the gap a little bit, don't you have to do things like this? Like, even though that, you want to try to prove that you can hang with all the others, they're not going to cut you any breaks.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I don't know how much the G5 has choice in this matter, right? Like, as Mike Bloomgren, the Rice head coach, said in the story, this is up to the SEC and the Big Ten and what they want to do for college football. And if you read the tea leaves, it looks like there's this movement towards separating from the NCAA, right? The final conclusion of this deal is collectively bargained employment with the universities, where NIL comes in-house and they start sharing TV revenue. Well, UTSA, UTEP, Sam Houston, they're going to have a hard time affording 200 new student athletes as employees on minimum wage plus benefits and all that kind of stuff. Alabama can do that. Texas can do that. Baylor can do that. I don't think, Texas State can. And so there's going to have to be something that changes there. You can't have one entity doing this whole thing where they have employees and you have this other entity where they're not, and then you're, playing for the same championship. And so if that is the inevitable conclusion, then what can you do from there? I think as coaches, their answer is, let's play for something, right? And in Texas, if you win the 2A state championship, you don't feel less special than the team that won the 6A state championship. And I think coaches are wired to put stakes on things, and they think one of the revenues, one of the ways they can keep the roster together, one of the ways they can keep the fan base engaged is to have something to play for, like a national championship. I don't know if they have a direct route to that right now. Having their own would give that to them.
So, Mike, I know the playoff thing had been out there for a little while, and you were able to talk about that. There was also the topic here recently about, the separate set of rankings, and we've been fortunate just timing-wise to talk to a couple of different coaches like Eric Moriss earlier today, and he seems to be on board with the playoff idea, not so much keen on the rankings, and that was the feedback of a couple of others as well. I don't know how much you were able to get into that, but if you had any sort of a feel for how coaches would feel about even doing the rankings separately.
Yeah, I don't think they're as on board with the ranking thing. I think they get it from a standpoint of, like, if it's UTSA, number 4 UTSA versus number 8 North Texas, maybe that drums up a little extra, TV, viewership and stuff. But I think what they really want is a reason to keep guys on campus, right? Like, that's the thing that they're worried about the most. Like, Eric Moriss lost a 3,000-yard passer, a 1,000-yard rusher, and a 1,000-yard receiver, not to major national championship contending Power 4 programs. And maybe if North Texas wasn't playing for a bowl invite, maybe if they were playing for a national championship, you can convince that quarterback, like, hey, maybe you don't make as much money, but here you can go win something. Maybe you don't do that with every player. There's still going to be guys that move up and down because of money or playing time or whatever the case may be. But maybe it makes it easier for these G5 coaches to kind of build a culture and some excitement within their locker room and their fan base if there's something tangible to go get. I don't think the top 25 is that. I think it's more of maybe a Final Four with some conference champions. If you don't get into the college football playoff, you get to go do your own Final Four thing and drum up some excitement between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Mike Craven with us, Dave Campbell's Texas Football senior writer on the group of 5, but really in college football in general. Mike, when you make these tours, how long do you get a chance to sit down with a head coach, with Eric Moriss or whoever it might be? Is it 20 minutes? Is it an hour? Because I know writing a story is different than if somebody's on live for an interview with what, for example, we do.
Yeah, I tend to get 30 minutes to an hour with all the head coaches. I mean, it's different at each place, right? I mean, there's a couple of head coaches in the state that I've known, for over a decade now. So I don't know if they really give me a time limit on those trips. But for the most part, yeah, some of them are 20 minutes, some of them are 30 minutes, some of them kind of free flowing, depending on what they got going on that day. And, I try to get there on a day where they're not booked and packed. And so we can hang out a little bit more, because it's not, getting the magazine stuff, but you can figure out the depth chart. I mean, you can look at the roster and kind of know what's going on. I enjoy talking as much about, what's not in the stories and getting an idea of what's going on behind the scenes. They more openly talk about the other schools, and you can start learning some stuff, that way as well. So it's an enjoyable time. It's probably my favorite time of the year, honestly, making that tour. It's a lot of fun.
With you being a proud UTSA alum, how would you describe what Jeff Traylor's meant to that fan base in that school?
Well, more people know where I went to college than they used to. Like people would ask me what UTSA stood for, and now they're like, oh, the Roadrunners. I watched them on TV the other day. And so I went when there wasn't football. And so Jeff Traylor has obviously elevated the football program, but I think having a football program not only has helped the, atmosphere and experience for the students, because there wasn't much tying up to the campus, right? It was more of a commuter school. You didn't have football Saturdays, so there wasn't a whole lot of school spirit. I think now there's more school spirit and there's more recognition of the school. There's more of a spotlight on the school, and that obviously helps with your degree and the kind of the perception of your school.
Mike, who would you say among the G5 coaches are the fans in that place most nervous about losing to the P4 next year?
UTSA and Texas State. I think Jeff Traylor is just one of those guys that is always going to be in on coaching searches because he's won everywhere he's gone, and he's such a good program builder. I mean, UTSA wasn't really anything before Jeff Traylor got there, and now it's, a premier G5 program. And then G.J. Kinney is a star. I mean, he just is. He walks into a Texas State program that had never been to a bowl game, that hadn't won more than 4 games in I think 6 or 7 years. Immediately turns it over, keeps a lot of those guys on campus. I think with the win over Baylor and just when he was at Incarnate Word, they beat Texas State, right? So I think he's somebody with his background as a quarterback in the NFL. His dad was a high school coach, as y'all know. I think he's one of those guys that it's just a matter of when, not if, he kind of breaks in there.
It sure seems like here in a few years, and maybe not that many years, I think we kind of have an idea, but just how fortunate, and you have to give SMU credit because they pushed the issue and made concessions to get into that spot in the ACC. But Mike, do we truly realize, I think, how impactful that may have been for SMU, especially given all the topics we have nowadays?
No, I don't think people quite understand the chess move that SMU did. And I always joke that those rich guys at SMU know what they're doing. They're not dumb, right? You don't get that rich if you can't read the future a little bit or make your own future in a little bit of ways. They saw this division coming, and their thought was, their big money guy there, Bill Mercer. I remember when they had the announcement party that they were going to the ACC. We kind of asked them about the $100 million for going. For the TV revenue. And he looked us dead in the eye and he's like, guys, $100 million. We're not going to split $100 million. We can figure that out. Right. And when you have that kind of base where you can make up that money, then being with those helmets, being with the Power Four, being with that group of people is where you want to be as the next horizon happens. Because from what I know, the TV contracts for March Madness and for the college football playoff run out around the same time in 2031. And at that moment, there is going to be a seismic shift in what happens with college athletics. And SMU wanted to be on that side of the dance floor. Sam Houston did the same thing, leaving the FCS, right? People look around and go, why did Sam Houston leave, winning national championships, competing for national championships, to compete for a bowl game? Well, they also see the split coming, and they want to be with the second group, right? Not with the third. And so I think a lot of the conference realignment that isn't the Big Ten and the SEC has been to kind of jockey yourself into the best position you can be in for what is inevitably coming down the pike in 2030, 2031.
All right, so I saw that's pinned at the top of your feed about what you did in 2023 with all the various places you went to watch a game, and then you said you're going to write a coffee book. When is that out? If it's already out, I apologize, but what are you doing with that?
Yeah, so Texas Monthly is designing it right now. I actually am going to see the proofs of the cover here in a day or two when they get them to me. It'll be out in August. It's 13 chapters. So when Sam Houston moved up, that became 13 FBS teams in the state of Texas. There's 13 weeks in the college football season, or at least there was. And so it was like, hey, I'll go to a different university each week, watch a football game on their home campus, kind of write a book about the history of the programs, like the best players, the best coaches, the best seasons, the traditions, what to expect if you go to a game there, best places to eat across town. And so we partner with Texas Monthly. They're going to publish it, and it'll be out, in August. And it'll be, able to be purchased alongside the magazine, hopefully.
What can you? I'm just going to ask right here on the air. Come up here and do an interview with us in the studio and show everybody the book on YouTube.
I think we ought to do that, Mike. I'm not sure when you're going to be back in Waco, whenever that might be. But yeah, we'd like to. We show the book on air, show it on the TV screen, and let people know about it. I think that's a great. And I know what you mean by the coffee book. Man, the coffee table books that I had in the day, and I still have them in boxes. Those are some big deals. So let's do that, okay?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it just felt like Dave Campbell's is kind of, a historic reference book for high school and college football. Like, why not continue that on with the coffee book? And so it was a lot of fun doing the research. And yeah, if y'all will have me on, I will absolutely get down up there for me to Waco and do that. That would be great for y'all. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Mike Craven, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine senior writer, and his thoughts about the